What's up, guys? Thanks for checking out the video. I really appreciate you being here, and I'm super pumped for what we're going to cover today, because today I'm going to share with you my top tips for running a new client kickoff call. And now keep in mind, everything I share with you today is going to be rooted in my successes and failures in B2B professional service and software sales. And I work primarily with SMBs. So I'm talking directly to business owners, marketing directors, heads of sales, COOs, but I also do some work with enterprise companies. So a lot of what we talk about today will also be applicable in those situations. What I'm going to cover with you today is going to include everything from what I find helpful pre-close. So pre-close considerations, things that I do with my team, pre-kickoff call, and then I'll actually walk you through how I structure my kickoff calls. Now, before we get started, if you guys don't know who I am, my name's Will Pollard. I'm VP of Sales at a company called Blue Leads. And if you're wondering why you should be listening to me, I want to take a quick second and share a little bit of my experience, which is really, again, rooted in the tips that we're going to discuss today. So for the last 8 years, I've actually been working within an SMB, and I work with SMBs day in, day out, selling CRM software and CRM implementation, digital marketing, website services. So I've been doing this a lot. I spent 5 years on the CS side, actually implementing this stuff. And then for the last 3 years, I've worked over 1,000 deals on the sales side. So I have that experience handing clients off, as well as actually receiving new clients and implementing the work. So I feel like I have a unique perspective on the types of information and how to really structure these calls to set everybody up for success. And honestly, I've learned a lot of this stuff the hard way, and I feel like you guys shouldn't have to. If I can save you a little bit of headache and help you be more effective and help your clients be more effective, then hey, this is well worth the time investment in my book. So I want to start things off talking about some of the considerations that I keep in mind pre-close. So I'm actually active in the sales process that I do to keep my team, help my team be ultra successful. And then these are also some things that I do to set the client up for success. So first, kicking off with my team. Throughout the entirety of the sales process, I find it super valuable to make sure that all of my activity is logged. So all of my calls, my emails, my meetings, I'm logging all of that inside the CRM, so that my team can pop in there. They can see how long I've been communicating with folks, take a look at different email threads where we may have shared helpful updates or documents, and just give them a general sense of what's led up to closing this new client. Now, also with that, I'm taking notes on all of my different calls, my connect, discovery, proposal review, one-off calls or proposal feedback calls. I'm taking notes on that feedback or on those calls. I'm logging those in my CRM, again, so that my team has this context, and really I can transfer the knowledge that I have to my team as seamlessly as possible. Now, that's what I do for my team, but also to set my client up for success. Once we review the proposal and I get a verbal commitment, if I haven't already, I'm sharing next steps with the client, what they should be expecting once they sign the proposal. I walk them through, once they sign, what's going to happen, what emails I'm going to send or communication they're going to receive from me, what I'm going to be doing with my team, about how long it's going to take to have the actual kickoff call, and everything in between. So I'm really trying to put them at ease, guide them through the process, and set those expectations on what we're going to be doing moving forward. And ultimately, the whole time through the sales process, including leading up to the kickoff, I'm really focused on building momentum, getting them excited about solving these particular problems that their business is facing, getting them excited and bought into my team, myself, and our organization and our solution on how it's really going to lead them to their desired result. So I'm keeping that energy high, again, giving them all of the necessary information that they need so we can continue building momentum. And by the time they get on that kickoff call, their frame of mind, they're in such a great spot that they're so pumped to meet my team. It makes the handoff seamless and easy. So Let's say now we've closed the client and we move to what I call pre-kickoff, or where I want to actually brief my team. What I really like to do is a couple things. So before I have that meeting with my team, ideal scenario is I'm creating a documented outline where I'm basically recapping and summarizing and really organizing my notes and sending those over to the CS team ahead of time, along with the proposal or scope of work, and giving them a little bit of time so they can actually review. And then once they've had time to take a look at that documentation, now we're having a call to go over any important questions that they have. What I typically find is, anytime someone gets a new client, especially depending on the complexity of the client, it can be a little bit like drinking from a fire hose. And so I want to minimize that as possible and give the CS team as much opportunity to really digest the information, make sense of it, and come up with some great questions and ideas that they can inject on the kickoff call to get our clients excited and really build that relationship. So in this document that I create, again, highly recommend this should be in your CRM, just like all of your other notes and activity. But the way that I like to structure this, I include a few key different sections. So I include an engagement summary, which is literally just like, the minimalist version of an executive summary of what the engagement includes. So usually I keep this to like 2 or 3 sentences that just, hey, if, I was reporting up to the CEO and they see, hey, we're working with this client, what are we doing with them? I can rattle that off, in about 7-8 seconds. Also, in this engagement summary section of the internal brief, I'm including any special considerations that the CS team should be aware of. So things like special timeline considerations, any other solutions providers that we may be working with, budget considerations, things like that, other bundled services that may be out of the norm, anything that they should be aware of that's not a typical situation for a client like this. Once I cover the engagement overview, I like to dive into the company overview. So I want to give my team a primer on the company's business model. Now, I should have collected this during discovery, so probably not a whole lot of additional research that has to be done here, but I want to have a clear, concise way of how this company, what do they do? Like, what's their main value proposition? How do they generate revenue? Who are the folks that they serve? And that type of information. I also like to give my team a heads up on who the main point of contact is going to be and any other notable contacts that I've met through the sales process that have been CC'd on email threads, or that I know are going to be on the kickoff call or involved in the engagement at a later date. So it's just easier for them to remember those names and kind of keep those considerations in mind as they're addressing the client, scheduling out next steps, that sort of stuff. So now I've talked about the company. I'll brief my team on the client's current situation. So I talk to them, want to clearly articulate the problem or problems that the client's facing, any specific challenges, what they've tried so far, what they're doing now, what's worked, what hasn't worked. If your business is anything like mine, it's really important, the tech stack that, that the client's currently using. So I want to get all this out, give the CS team a real concise but comprehensive overview of what the particular problem is and what the client's doing and what's led up to ultimately engaging in our services, like why this is important now, those types of things. Then once we cover the current situation, I'm really diving into clearly articulated goals. So you may have heard of SMART goals or OKRs. There's several different frameworks out there for really like defining goals and objectives. I recommend, choosing one and really living with that methodology and making sure that, that works across your organization. But I want to have those clearly defined goals. I also want to have those prioritized for my team as well. So they know like what's top priority, what's second, et cetera, et cetera. And then when I'm briefing the team on the goals, like what we're trying to accomplish for this client, I highly recommend that you have KPIs or measurables in place on how we're going to measure success, so that they have that information. A lot of times they're the ones that set how we measure success for different services. But regardless, it's important that we understand what we're trying to do, what success looks like, and how it's ultimately going to be measured. And then in my internal brief, I'll review the scope of work. So in the documented version with my CS team, I'm discussing or documenting any expectations. I'm also putting in like why particular, services or bits of software are important to the client. And then this way, I've documented all this stuff. And so when I actually get on a call with my team and we have that Q&A session, I'm basically taking this information, adding additional nuance, really clarifying particular points of interest that have come up during the sales process, and also, answering questions from my CS team to ensure that they're feeling like they're going into the call successful. All right, now let's talk about, once we actually get on the kickoff call, what that looks like. So a couple different areas. The way that I like to structure my calls, I like to start all of my calls where I set a real clear and upfront agenda. Then I dive into introductions. Then we dive into business alignment, goals, immediate priorities. We discuss notable considerations or blockers that we need to be aware of. And then we talk about project management and SOPs and move into next steps. So let's dive in and let's kick things off with intros. So as I talked about before, leading up to this moment is really all about building up momentum, building up confidence in our organization and in the team. So, that doesn't stop once we actually get on the kickoff call. Now, once everybody has a chance to join the call, what I do is I set a clear and upfront agenda, and I give everyone the opportunity to, another opportunity to add to the agenda. So I'll ask does that sound good? Is that in line with what you all wanted to cover today? And then I'll follow that up. Is there anything that I haven't covered or that I don't have planned that anyone wants to make sure that we cover today? And then I give everyone an opportunity to add items or, say that we're good to go. And then from there, I reiterate some of, the key roles of folks on both sides. So on the client side and the CS side, this may look like, man, I'm super excited to get things kicked off, after I go through my agenda. So we're going to kick things off with intros. And as I have talked about before, John is going to be your main point of contact, and Susan is going to be his right hand. And, on the client side, Laura, I told the team that you're going to be the main point of contact. Dan, I know that you handle the IT side of things. So when we get to some of the more technical integration bits, we're going to pull you in. And I'm just giving, setting that stage, giving a high level overview. And then I hand it over to my team's main point of contact, where we can go through and do more personal introductions. But what I'm really trying to do here is kind of set the stage. At this point, none of these people have met. So I look at it as like, I'm the host of the party. I need to put everybody at ease, let them know why everybody's here. And then I hand it over to my team member, and, they can really lead the introductions from there, give everybody a chance to speak. I find that this really breaks the ice and sets the meeting off on a great foot. Once we cover introductions, then I like to transition my calls directly into what I call baseline level business alignment. And so in my opinion, a kickoff call isn't the time or place for an ultra deep dive into how a client's business works, its processes, and the nuance. But I do think that it's really important that everyone understands and has a shared definition of how the client's business works. And so what I like to do is basically reiterate a quick summary of the client's business model, which is the one that I shared with my team and the internal brief. And then I open up the opportunity. I'm opening up to the client to, again, be able to highlight key points of emphasis or nuance that's important to them, that they translate to the team, So this way, I'm creating that consistency, and really now I'm starting to get the client and CS team to communicate, and I'm slowly starting to pull myself, again, as the host of this meeting, I'm pulling myself out of the kind of center of attention and more so putting my CS team in. And now it's a CS and client meeting versus client and sales. All right, guys, once we cover the baseline business alignment, where everyone walks away with a shared understanding of the client company's main value proposition, who they serve, how they generate revenue, and any points of emphasis around priority channels, products, services, or campaigns as it relates to high-level business goals, as well as this particular project or engagement, I like to transition the call directly into goals. And now this is, in my opinion, the single most important part of the entire conversation, because as I see it, really the goal of the kickoff call is to get the CS team and the client in the same room, and we walk away with a shared understanding of the key problems that we're solving for, and also how success is actually going to be measured. So what are the KPIs we're going to be looking at or are optimizing for as we work on this project together? I really am trying to create that alignment so that the client knows that we know really what we're working toward, and then also so the CS team can hear this information directly from the client. So the way that I like to do this is I'll actually recap the goals that the client and I discussed, and I'll also include information around the KPIs that we talked about. I'll open it up to the client to elaborate, expand, highlight points of emphasis. And then this way, again, the CS team can hear what we're trying to achieve in the client's own words, which I feel like creates a lot of alignment and, again, opens up the opportunity for more mutual conversation and just continues to build that rapport and momentum between the CS team and the client themselves. Once we've all discussed the goals, basically the where we're going, the destination on the map, now it's time to really set the immediate priorities. Now, depending on the timing, the time I have left in the call, just the pacing of the conversation in general, also the scope of the particular project that I'm working on, how I cover this information may vary. But the biggest point that I try to keep in mind is, hey, I don't need to zoom way out and outline every single step of the particular project, because in a lot of situations, once the teams start working together, the CS team and the client, we get under the hood more. Some of the future items of the initial plan might change a little bit. But what I can do is really ensure a seamless transition from the sales process to the actual implementation and that initial time to value. So what I do is I'll outline and get agreement from both sides. This is really a collaborative discussion on, once we know what the goals are, what those immediate action items are, let's say for the first 4 weeks or the first month post-launch. Now this gives everybody a clear route of what we're going to do, what's priority. And again, I'm opening it up for some collaborative discussion here, and again, really trying to build that alignment. We've set the initial priorities. I also like to bring up any special considerations or potential blockers or just things that we need to be aware of. So this would include like making sure that we're ultra clear on who needs to be involved in these future conversations. Also discussing things like upcoming PTO or events or other things that may prevent us from moving forward as intended. Also, I like to confirm I work in professional services and software. So it's really important that I confirm on the call that everybody has the right login information. Also, this is where I like to bring up document sharing. Also, really want to uncover any other teams or meetings that we may be dependent on to actually implement some of the initial priorities in the scope of work. So I like to get all this stuff out in the open, from the get-go. That way we can identify if there's anything that is going to be a blocker and either iron out those wrinkles on this call or make sure they're on the radar. So once we jump off the kickoff call, then the proper folks can, can do what they need to do to be able to get those things in place so we can really hit the ground running. All right, so at this point of the call, really the authority has been transitioned over to the CS team. And now it's time to really transition into how we're going to get things done. And so, again, the CS team is really driving at this point of the call. We're covering things here like, what's the project management software we're going to use together, meeting cadence or communication styles, decision-making process, what things look like internally, how the client should handle if they have particular questions, all information really related on how we're going to work together on a day-to-day basis to set those standard operating procedures. And then basically this segues into the next step section of the call, which is really the last section here where we are recapping key takeaways and action items and ultimately scheduling those next steps with the client to keep things moving forward and march as quickly as possible to that initial time to value. We like to leave a little bit of time for some additional Q&A. And then once we get all those questions answered, I'm always sure to thank everyone for their time and show the excitement and appreciation for the client's business. And at that time, it's really up to us to get to work and deliver on the results that we had. So these are my tips that I've seen work for me, how I like to run my client kickoffs. And I hope you guys found this information valuable. If you found it valuable, please be sure to like the video, subscribe. And if you have some tips that you found successful, please be sure to share them in the comments below.